¿Hacia dónde va Estados Unidos y qué implica para Europa? Una mesa redonda con Julissa Reynoso, ex embajadora de Estados Unidos en España y Andorra y socia de Winston & Strawn LLP, y Christopher Caldwell, periodista, ensayista y articulista en The New York Times. Bienvenidos. Con la moderación de Camino Quiroga. Recuerden que se trata de una mesa bilingüe. Welcome. Camino Quiroga va a moderar la mesa. Camino es vocal de la Junta Directiva del Cercle d'Economia. Benvinguda. Y recuerden que es una mesa bilingüe, español e inglés. Pueden disponer de esos traductores. Lancen sus preguntas porque estamos deseando escucharles. Camino, andaban.
Bueno, muchísimas gracias. First of all, thank you very much for being here with us. And you know that we have 45 minutes. Now it's 10:39, but should be 45. Please change it. We need time. And we will try to focus in some core topics. First of all, to understand the situation that we have now, we would like to speak about the drivers behind Trump's second-term campaign, then the outlook for US, Europe, NATO relations and implications for a shift in Europe, then China's strategy regarding global leadership, and the current dynamics between Spain and the United States, and finally, we will try to ask you to help our president, Mr. Pedro Sánchez, because it could be that we can tell him something on next Wednesday. So let's start with you, Christopher. Because everyone in Europe keeps asking this, 1.5 years ago, Trump won the elections, and we thought that he wasn't going to do it. What is the real reason he won?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that an important thing to understand about the United States is that everybody sees the same Trump. It's easy to believe that the people who vote for Trump are blind to certain, let's say, faults of his or weaknesses of his. But in fact, I think they see the same flawed person that you see in Europe. What they're closest to, and what they're closer to, and what they have a divergent opinion of, is the evolution of power in the United States. And Trump is the candidate of people who feel that power is moving away from them. And this is a larger, deeper, structural thing that's been happening for a while. But to sum it up simply, I would say that it used to be that the center of American industry and economic might was in the factory. And now the center of American industry and economic might is in the computer, which means to a certain extent, it's on the university campus too. And so you have systems now that are designed by, let's call them intellectuals. Robert Reich, Bill Clinton's labor minister, called them symbolic analysts. But whatever you call them, Donald Trump's voters aren't them. So after 2020, when his presidency ended in a kind of a strange way, it was easy to think he was gone. But this shift in power isn't gone, and as long as it's not gone, this will be the division in American politics.
Mm-hmm. So, Julissa,
yes.
Vivimos aquellos 9 aproximadamente millones de votantes americanos que decidieron pasar de votar al Partido Demócrata a votar a Trump, probablemente por esta razón o quizá por otras que tú conozcas. Pero con independencia de explicarnos si crees que ha habido alguna especialidad distinta de lo que nos ha explicado Christopher, ¿qué oportunidades ves en estas midterm elections? ¿Tú crees que hay cierto cambio o se mantiene la misma situación?
Sí, a ver, el señor Trump ganó por razones, como explicado por Chris también, creo que a nivel muy práctico, los ciudadanos americanos se vieron con una inflación importante, o sea, las cosas estaban muy caras. Y yo me recuerdo viviendo en Madrid, que iba a mi ciudad de Nueva York, y cada vez que iba pensé, qué cara está mi ciudad. Y eso soy yo, ¿verdad? Que tengo cierto privilegio. Se imagínense la gente común y corriente que estaba viendo eso día a día. Eso es un tema. El segundo era que se vio que nuestra administración de Biden no tenía control o orden con respecto al tema migratorio. Y esos dos temas, el tema económico, la inflación en particular, y el asunto de que se veía como que el gobierno no tenía control de este tema tan importante, creo que ayudaron bastante al señor Trump ser reelegido. Hoy en día, esos dos temas todavía son muy importantes. La economía sigue bastante complicada, con la inflación más alta hoy que cuando llegó, y todos los días los precios aún más altos, particularmente por la guerra, pero antes de la guerra con Irán todavía estaban altos los precios. Y el tema migratorio, que fue algo positivo para el señor Trump, ahora es algo negativo por los incidentes que se vieron públicamente en lugares como Minnesota. La gente se sintió que se le fue la mano con ese tema. Y por esos dos asuntos, yo creo, y otros, pero vamos a decir esos dos temas, no por asuntos de que es autocrático o alegaciones de que es antidemocrático o que es una persona X, es por asuntos muy puntuales que creo que en las elecciones de noviembre hay una gran preferencia al partido de la oposición, a los demócratas. No solamente por esta situación, esos argumentos, sino que históricamente el partido que está fuera de la presidencia le va muy bien ese año midterm, ese año de elecciones cuando no es un año electoral presidencial. Entonces, todas las señales, todos los indicadores dicen que los demócratas le va a ir muy bien y posiblemente ganen, particularmente la Cámara de Diputados. Lo que tenemos como estrellita es que sí hay movimientos en diferentes estados importantes, en Virginia, en Texas, en Carolina del Sur, donde hay reconfiguraciones de distritos particulares, distritos de diputados que pueden ser que lleven a más que se redefinen para darle prioridad a votantes de perfil republicano. Entonces, eso puede complicar esta conclusión. Pero con eso aún los demócratas tienen los números mucho más altos que los republicanos, no porque no quieren como demócratas, sino que hay un rechazo en la política que existe hoy en día de la administración del presidente Trump.
Thank you. And then there are something quite unbelievable for us because we were reading these days in several newspapers that part of the people that belong to the MAGA area, they have started to say that the United States of America, they are not a democracy. They are a republic. And we would like to know if this idea is because something so simple like the name of democracy is similar to the Democrat Party. I don't think that something so simple is the truth. Or it is because they would like to move the position of Mr. Trump, or they want to accept that the government of the actual administration that is clearly more authoritarian is the system that they want.
Mm-hmm. Well, actually this discussion of whether the United States is a democracy or a republic is a very old one. And it's not recent, and it's not it's not confined to the political right. I mean, I think that the founders of the country defined it as a mixed regime. It has democratic elements. We vote for representatives. We vote everyone in the country for president. But we have a Supreme Court, which is not a democratic institution. We have regulatory bodies. And we have rules that are in the Constitution that are immune to democracy, like freedom of speech. You can't vote to censor people, no matter how many votes you get. So it is this mixed regime. I think, it comes up from time to time. I think that the interesting thing about the Trump movement and about the Orban movement as well is actually that its failings have often tended to lie on the side of democracy. That is, they think that the elected president should be actually able to do more than previous elected presidents have been able to do. I mean, I suppose this democracy versus republic is one way to describe it, but I think it's a pretty common description.
Okay, but finally, if for us that we are a democracy, because in Europe we thought that the United States was like the firelight, You were looking at the United States thinking that we wanted to be like them in the sense of democracy. But now things are quite different. In any case, for us it's difficult to understand because even his popularity is falling, clearly. His candidates get women, the Republican primaries, state by state. So how is possible that both things were true at the same time?
So in the United States, people are very loyal to their party for the most part. So you're going to have people who vote for the Republican and the Democrat. It doesn't matter who it is. It could be, Mickey Mouse, and people will vote for that person if that's their party. Okay, I will vote for Mickey Mouse. Just kidding. So there's these folks in the middle that are quite interesting and really kind of swing. And then, as you know, we have 50 states, and these states are all have very specific identities, and you can very much tell which is going for the Republican or the Democrat, irrespective of who the candidate is. So it comes down to a handful of states that really determine who's going to win a presidential election. I don't know, that's not sound very democratic, but that's just the way it is. And even though I know Chris mentioned we have representatives, but we have representatives through this electoral college process that they then vote for the president. So you can, as you know, win the popular vote and still lose the presidential election. So it's quite complicated. But for Mr. Trump, obviously at this day, he has a very low approval rating. As I said, I think but his approval rating has not been above 50, I don't think ever. So a lot of it depends on who's the opponent, right? Who's going to be the Democratic nominee, and how the Democrats run that process, right? But also how people are feeling that year, how the economy is doing. And to us, frankly, the economy is king in the elections, and much more important in many ways than who the candidate is.
So they will vote with their pockets, not
Correct.
with their principles.
I believe so.
Okay, so in Spain as well, usually. So coming back to Europe, the relations between the United States and Europe. So you were speaking about free speech, and it is very interesting for us because we have seen how, for instance, J.D. Vance told Europe in Munich that the real danger for Europe, it wasn't Russia, it wasn't China. The real danger for Europe were Europe, because he thought that we are losing the freedom of speech. And it's difficult to understand this idea if we put together with the position of Elon Musk or Marco Rubio, or even J.D. Vance as well, going to to Germany and to Hungary, trying to help some particular parties. So do you think that this is someone that wants to help us, or it is a truly intromission into the European policy?
That was a very interesting episode, Vance's speech in Munich, because one of the things that may sound quite unbelievable to a European audience is the Trump administration is extremely preoccupied with strengthening the relationship with Europe. It is vitally important to them. They're obsessed with it. And that's what they thought they were doing with Vance. I think it helps to recall the context in which Vance spoke. You just had the Romanian election, in which an election was, that was an election in which it appeared that a populist was likely to be made president of Romania, and the authorities canceled the election while voting was already underway in the second round, and ran the election 6 months later. That really shocked conservatives in Washington. And I would say that maybe the best way to think about that Munich speech would be as if it were turned around. Now, Europeans right now are worried about Donald Trump and his attitude towards democracy. Why? Why is it important to Europe? Well, it's important to Europe because Europe is bound up in treaties with the United States. It's bound up in international structures. And if things are systematically organized so that politicians of a certain type are disadvantaged in the American system, there's a problem. And I think that that's what J.D. Vance was thinking when he came to Europe. But I don't think that it goes beyond that. I don't think that there's a deeper question of wishing a divorce with Europe in any part of the American population, except from time to time in Donald Trump's head.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So let's go to trade and economy, because we are here. This is the Círculo Economía. Mm-hmm. So it's logically that we speak about trade and economy. So remember the 2nd of April last year, he decided to nominate the Day of the Liberation, or the Liberation Day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then he was increasing or reducing the tariffs depending on the situation of the relation with different countries. So is this attack to trade and as well to the multilateral free trade going to last after Trump, or is going to be forever? ¿Nos explicas cuál es tu posición? ¿Crees que cuando venga el siguiente presidente demócrata va a moverse de esta situación o va a volver a colaborar con Europa? Porque la relación económica que existe entre Europa y Estados Unidos, como ha dicho Christopher, es importantísima.
Yes, listen, I think the relationship between Europe and the United States is so deep. And these economies are so integrated that it will be virtually impossible for any president to strike it and make it disappear, as much as maybe there is some wishful thinking. Obviously, you can complicate lives for people and for businesses and for economic actors, and Mr. Trump tried to do that. What was interesting was that the commercial activity continued, right? So in a robust way. And there came a point that there were challenges, legal challenges to those decisions, which happened not only on the tariff issue, but a host of other commercial and trade matters as well. And ultimately, the courts, the U.S. Supreme Court in particular, decided that many of these actions by the federal government, using executive powers to execute and maneuver laws to basically make tariff regimes, were illegal. And because of that, I think there was a message to the world that, yes, the president has a lot of authority in the executive branch to manage our commercial affairs, and even has a lot of leeway to work with the tariff structure. However, there's so far, he can take it so far before the courts and the law have some limits, put some containment to these activities. And that, frankly, was the case for a lot of different things that happened last year. Last spring, there was a whole lot of executive orders coming at all types of things, from tariffs to universities to law firms like mine. A whole bunch of people were just shocked by the volume of executive orders dealing with things that traditionally the president just doesn't touch or doesn't so aggressively attack in especially the first couple of months in office. It just seemed overwhelming. And a lot of those orders, and a lot of that rulemaking coming from the White House has been contained, has been diminished, if you will, through the court system. So that gives me hope that there are still checks and balances, proper checks and balances in place on these trade and commercial issues, and that it's not just a free-for-all like I think we thought last year in around April.
Great. Now we are going to move to security and the alliance. Today, I think that everybody was reading the newspaper saying that finally the United States will withdraw all the soldiers that there are in Poland. And in July, there will be a summit, a NATO summit in Ankara. Do you think that Trump is going to explain, as Marco Rubio says this morning, how is going to be the defense position of the United States in relation with Europe? And connected with it, do you think that America, for us, is still a reliable power?
Well, it's certainly a very unpredictable power right now. And it's unpredictable in Trump's rhetoric, but clearly it's unpredictable in his actions. I mean, the Iran attack and this ongoing problem with Iran was a big surprise to the American people, and it's highly unpopular. And it was done against the wishes of his military advisors, and it was done against the wishes of his political advisors. And so it depends on what you mean by reliable. It's certainly not predictable. On the other hand, there is a limit to how far this can go. First of all, people often describe other people as saying, oh, there's no one like him, but really there is no one like Donald Trump. We do not have a second Donald Trump to offer you in 2028.
Yes.
So it's going to end. That personal element of it is going to end. And when it ends, there will be Republicans. Let's say the Republicans are, either get the presidency again or are in a position of influence. Those people will be very different, but they will share a certain analysis of the world. And there are things that I tend to think that the United States and Europe share much more than divides them. I think we have problems of deindustrialization and identity in the world and what to do about migration. There are a lot of shared things, but there are issues on which these differences will persist, but at a manageable level, I believe.
So this is very important because you are saying finally that it doesn't matter if in the future we have a Democrat or a Republican president. At the end, we keep on being the West, so we will be more or less with good relations.
Well, yes, I did not say it didn't matter if we had a Republican or a Democrat, but this question of the West is at this. Yes, we are both the West, and we do certainly need each other, and I think that the West is, the United States and Europe are both shrinking powers in terms of the amount of global GDP that we control and the amount of global weaponry that we can control. Mm-hmm. So actually the case for the Western alliance in objective terms gets stronger and stronger. But we have certain philosophical, paradoxical problems when we talk about the West, because the West's ideals are universalistic. And so there tends to be something self-dissolving about the West. I mean, the deeper you go into the West, the less visible it becomes. But that's a philosophical discussion.
This is quite interesting, extremely interesting. We will speak after.
Yeah.
Then let's go to China. The other day, couple of weeks ago, Mr. Xi Jinping and Mr. Donald Trump, they had a meeting in Beijing.
Yeah.
And Xi Jinping told Donald Trump in a very Chinese way, very subtle way, the following thing. I want to read it because I don't want to make a mistake. So they say that they don't want that China and America could avoid the Thucydides trap. La trampa de Tucídides, que si recordáis, fue el problema que tuvo Atenas y Esparta, cuando Esparta era una ciudad próspera y Atenas comenzó a ser más próspera, no acabó de creerse Esparta, que era más próspera Atenas, y acabó todo aquello en una guerra. Y entonces, he says that the whole idea that when the rising power challenge the ruling one, they usually end is a war. And the president of China says that it could be wonderful to avoid a war and to work together. ¿Qué piensas, Julissa, de esta velada información que le ha dado Xi Jinping a Donald Trump?
Yes.
Porque él lo ha vendido como si era antes, que era cuando estaba Joe Biden. Ahora que está él, esto no ocurre.
Yes, so I have to say that any outreach to China by the president, be that Joe Biden or Donald Trump, is a positive thing. And I think one of the things that we should have done more of when we were meeting the Democrats, should have done more of, was deal with China, in my view, in a robust, sophisticated, critical manner. And I think there were opportunities that were missed. I appreciate that President Trump went to have a conversation with the Chinese government. I think we have to do it with our own values and consistency in line, and hence, there are things that we have historically objected to that we should keep objecting to, and that should be the manner by which we deal with all of our, the other, say, great powers. So I see it as a positive thing that there is now fluid contact and communication with the Chinese government. I think that we should have done more of it when we came to the White House. I feel that that the first President Trump, had a very hard position vis-a-vis China, and that it really took Washington. It became part of the Washington thinking through the Biden era, and it didn't fully help the relationship. That we didn't break that that we didn't have a clear path different from the Trump administration. Now, President Trump has decided to revisit that position, and I actually think it's net positive. But I do think our position on human rights and other matters of importance to our values as a country, including democracy, however we defined it, should be part of this framework of conversation, not just assume that we're just going to get along about everything. And I think those specifics and the details have to be put forth.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to Spain and the United States, and so we will come a little bit closer to home. So you know that our Prime Minister, Pedro Sánchez, was one of the first leaders to speak out strongly against the war in Gaza, against the war in Iran, to protect the rights of the immigrants. And of course, we think that the Trump administration doesn't agree with him. That's clear. But we would like to know if it means that when one Spanish Prime Minister takes such a strong position, does Washington see as a small country just making noise, or as something that generally matters? Mm-hmm. What do you think, Christopher?
I think that probably, I think that a good deal of Prime Minister Sanchez's differences with Donald Trump have been undertaken in the belief that they help him here domestically.
Yeah.
And I think that he may exaggerate the animosity towards Spain that is felt in the United States. I would say that the differences between the two countries were much more significant and much more consequential in 2004, when, in the wake of the Atocha bombing, you had the election of Zapatero, the exit of Spain from the Iraq War coalition, and then an entire cataract of developments of progressive legislation, gay marriage, everything, in what we had thought of as a conservative country. And I think that put the American understanding of its relationship with Europe and its relationship with NATO under tremendous pressure. That was a major moment. I don't see Spain playing that role now, and I think that for a couple of reasons. I think the American attitude towards the Middle East is changing. I think that the Spanish attitude towards Gaza is shared with Ireland and Norway and increasingly France and Italy and other European countries. But I think that if there were a real area of tension between the two countries, it might be China, as we've mentioned. I mean, I think that it's very interesting the way even Boris Johnson buckled when pressured by the White House about Huawei, for instance. Mm-hmm. Spain has not buckled in that way, and I know that it's all bound up now in scandal and that sort of thing. But that might be the true area of division between Washington and Madrid now, the relationship to China.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and as well with Europe. So imagine that you were an advisor of the Spanish president, and you want to tell him something interesting that help our president to have a better relation, even though he says that the relation is a good one and it's a little bit of trying to have a good place in the internal politics. Si le quisieras decir algo a nuestro presidente, ¿tú qué le dirías? Mire, presidente.
Pero antes de
hacer
eso, la crítica del presidente Sánchez hacia la política de Estados Unidos vis-a-vis algunas de nuestras acciones en el Medio Oriente, o la política de nosotros en el Medio Oriente con el tema de Gaza en particular, ha sido consistente, porque cuando Biden era presidente también nos criticó con ese tiempo. Entonces, esto no es por el señor Trump, esto ha sido ya años, y yo estaba aquí y lo viví. Entonces, capaz la manera del mensaje ha evolucionado, pero el mensaje más o menos es el mismo. Con Irán obviamente no teníamos en la guerra, gracias a Dios, pero yo creo que a una población, la gran mayoría de los norteamericanos hoy en día están en contra de esa guerra también. Entonces, el presidente, de nuevo, la manera es otra cosa, pero la posición del presidente Sánchez tiene más en común con la mayoría del votante americano que la posición del presidente Trump sobre la guerra de Irán. Entonces, ahí hay mucho más en común que no. Con el pueblo americano estamos hablando.
El pueblo, no con la administración.
Sí, pero con los ciudadanos, con la gran mayoría de los americanos que rechazan esa guerra y no la entienden. Y más allá, no quieren que termine ya porque le está costando muchísimo la gasolina. ¿Qué sugerencia? Bueno, paciencia. Eso no solamente lo digo al presidente Sánchez, se lo digo a todos los ciudadanos americanos, que hay que tener paciencia, que nosotros estamos viviendo unos tiempos complicados. Este año estamos mejor que el año pasado, yo lo creo, en términos de la democracia y la participación ciudadana y ese sentido de liberación que tenemos como pueblo. El año pasado, yo te digo la verdad, yo estaba muy preocupada, especialmente al principio del año cuando vino los ataques de diferentes formas y por diferentes medios. Hoy estamos, creo, mejor, hoy hemos visto la participación democrática a niveles muy altos por la gente en las elecciones que hemos tenido, las elecciones locales en diferentes partes del mundo. Y ha habido un rechazo importante de los temas muy antidemocráticos por las Cortes. Obviamente pueden hacer más, pero han hecho algo, se contiene un poco de estas políticas que son excesivas. Entonces yo sugiero que la gente nos dé la oportunidad de arreglarnos un poco y de buscar manera de salir de esta situación, con todo respeto al señor Trump, que es mi presidente, y yo soy muy respetuosa de la institución. Pero hay cosas que sí son abusivas y excesivas. Y con el voto, ahora en noviembre, pero también con la justicia en las Cortes, vamos a buscar manera de mejorar esto.
Fantástico. Tenemos algunas preguntas que nos han enviado, pero antes nos gustaría, porque prácticamente algunas de ellas las hemos comentado ya, pero me gustaría que nos pusieras una imagen que teníamos prevista para que todos vieran. Hemos elegido... ¿La imagen la tenemos por ahí? ¿Sí? Aquí la tenemos. Es la imagen de Donald Trump como Jesucristo, que es una imagen que yo creo que ha impactado muchísimo en Europa, y la hemos puesto por varios motivos. El primer motivo es porque utiliza las redes sociales, su red social, Truth Social, para conectar con su votante. El segundo motivo es porque quiere externalizar el poder militar americano, como América tiene una gran armada y, por tanto, cuidado con los demás, ¿no? El tercer motivo es porque utiliza a los que fallecen como marines o como tal, como que van al cielo. Y es una cosa que aquí, en Europa, esto nos impacta bastante, porque no tenemos esta mentalidad de que cuando mueres luego ves mujeres maravillosas en el cielo o algo así. Y luego la cuarta idea es porque él, sobre todo, se presenta como Jesús, como el Salvador, como aquel al que hay que orarle. Entonces, como es una imagen muy impactante para los europeos, me gustaría saber cuál es vuestro punto de vista. What's your point of view? Do you think that this image in America produce exactly the same effect or no? Please, Christopher.
Well, yes. As I said at the beginning, we're all seeing the same Trump. But there's an interesting thing about it, okay? I would say that the people who support Trump were absolutely shocked by that picture. It floored them, okay? And I think the Trump administration was extremely worried about it because they then began to announce that this was a picture of Trump as a doctor, okay? But this is an interesting thing. The people who oppose Trump were so unsurprised by it. They said, well, what's different about this piece? And that's an interesting thing that has happened I would say, in the last year of Trump's presidency, is that I think that in a certain way, those who have a bit of sympathy for what Trump is doing have been more sensitive to ways that he has changed and to ways that this second administration is different from the first. So I'll give you an example. In late November, early December, an actor whom you may know, Rob Reiner, was murdered with his wife in a horrible family incident. And Trump tweeted a kind of joke about it. And then a day later, he was asked about it in a press conference, and then he spoke of himself in the third person. He said, well, I thought he was a terrible person. I think that a lot of people said, well, what else is new? This is Trump. But I think that there is something that looks a little bit different about it. That was also the week that he decided to rename the Kennedy Center after himself. And there seems to have been actually a change, some kind of change in temperament or crisis or something that happened around the end of last year it's a shift. It's a change in his personality.
Y ya estamos casi fuera de
Yeah.
tiempo, pero como hemos empezado con un poco de delay, yo creo que podemos completar algunas cosas. Por favor,
The
por
other
favor,
thing that's
por
interesting,
favor.
we have this other, probably the greatest living American, Pope Leo, in our world today. And the Pope, the United States, as you know, is very religious. It's a religious country. Call it whatever you want. It's a religious country. People are of faith, and religion matters in politics. And so this photo, I think, was very much in reaction to the fact that you have the other American leader, which is the Pope, very much taking maybe stage and importance from this other great American. And so that conflict and that kind of tension, if you will, on ideology and view of the world and view of humanity and projection of what is being a great American, I think resulted in this picture. I think this came because there is a sense that I am just as holy as you, sir, Pope Leo. And so I think that the Pope is a very relevant person in our world, in the United States right now, and the White House knows it.
Well, this is a great news for us and as well for you, I'm sure. And just for finishing, let's think in 10 years. What's next?
10 years. Oh.
What is going to happen? Come on, go on.
As I say, I think that the United States has every reason to wish for a firmer alliance with Europe, but it is always difficult in the West because we do have universal values that make it a very complicated thing to say, hey, we are special, we are the West. And that's one of the reasons that immigration, borders, is going to continue to be a very explosive issue in your country and in ours.
Mm-hmm.
I think the American way of life and American institutions that have survived a whole lot of other crazy things in the past. This is not the first crisis we've seen. It won't be the last. Will ultimately be okay. And in 10 years, we will continue to be the great United States with wonderful universities, with independent courts, with people who are vigorously opinionated, and with an electoral process that is combative, but ultimately fair and democratic. And I do believe that our institutions have seen a whole lot of things, from wars to civil rights issues to impeachments of presidents to a whole lot of other things. And I think this is one of those tough moments, but we will be okay.
Thank you very much. And remember, en 10 años estaremos bien.
Gracias.